Hey there. Before I retired at 55 in December of 2024, there was one question that kept bouncing around in my head. What if I'm wrong? What if I retire early and in the future the market does something really ugly or healthcare costs much more than expected? Maybe something comes up with taxes I hadn't planned for and missed, or inflation gets out of control. And then later in my life, at 82 or some older age, I find I have to go back to work to make ends meet. That is, even if I can find a job, because when you're much older, well, that's not too easy. Plus, can you get a job that even meets your needs at the time? To me, that's a very scary situation that I want to avoid at all costs, as I'm sure you do too. Because when you retire early and you're having a much longer period of years in retirement than the norm, perhaps greater than 30 years, the fear of running out of money is not some theoretical thing. It feels very real. And the fear of running out of money is so prevalent, not only before you retire, but also sometimes irrationally while you're in retirement. And stay tuned because I'm going to talk about that. But anyway, this fear of retirement is so prevalent that I really felt I needed to create a dedicated video on just this topic to share what I've done prior to retirement to tackle this fear and how that's helped me to put that fear at bay while living in retirement too. So, how did I get rid of fearing I'd run out of money? Well, I'm depending on 7 layers of protection that I've set up. I'm going to walk through the 7 layers I've set up in my retirement plan that help me get comfortable enough to retire at 55 and not have the fear of running out of money during my hopefully long retirement. And for your own retirement planning, I think you need your own version of these layers if you haven't thought about them already. Because the goal is to have a retirement plan that can take a punch and still keep going. And if this kind of retirement planning perspective is helpful from someone actually living early retirement, not just talking about it from the outside, consider subscribing. And if you find the video useful, giving it a like also really helps to get it in front of more people who are trying to figure this stuff out too. Okay, layer one is knowing my real spending floor. Now, that sounds really basic, but I think it's one of the most important layers because if you don't know what it actually costs to live your life, then every retirement projection you do is built on a guess, and that creates the fear of running out of money because you don't have a solid idea or foundation. And guessing is fine when you're choosing which line to stand in the grocery store. And somehow I'm terrible at that because it seems I always end up in the longest one. But guessing is not great when you're deciding whether you can stop working. For me, the key was separating required spending from preferred spending. Of course, there are expenses I have to cover: housing, food, utilities, insurance, healthcare, taxes, car expenses. Then there are the preferred expenses: travel, hobbies, going out, home project upgrades, things like that. Now, don't get me wrong, those preferred expenses are really important to me. They are a big reason I enjoy retirement. We don't retire just so we can keep the lights on and stay at home watching TV all day. But the reason I worry less is because I know which spending is required and which spending is flexible. If the market has a rough year, I do not have to live the exact same financial life that year. I can pause a big trip. I can delay a major purchase. I can scale back home upgrade projects. I can spend less aggressively for a while. The point is, flexibility is a safety feature. A lot of people think retirement safety comes only from having more money. More money helps, of course, but flexibility is its own kind of wealth. If every dollar in your retirement budget is treated as non negotiable, then every market drop feels like a threat. But if you know your floor and you know your nice to haves, then you have room to adjust to protect your wealth and have your money last through a long retirement. So that's layer one. I know what I need, I know what I prefer, and I don't confuse the two. Layer two is my cash runway. This one is huge for me. And I think it's especially important if you retire early because when people worry about running out of money, a lot of that fear is really about one specific thing. What if the market crashes right after I retire? And that fear is legit. The technical term is sequence of returns risk, but the idea is simple. Bad returns early in retirement can hurt more than bad returns later. Especially if your portfolio drops early and you're also selling investments to pay your bills, you can dig a hole that's a lot harder to climb out of. When you're still working, a market drop can feel like stocks are on sale and it's a great time to buy. But when you retire and the paycheck stops, that same market drop feels very different because now it's affecting a source of your retirement income. Same drop, but entirely different emotions. That is why I like having a solid cash runway. The purpose of the runway is not to beat the stock market. The purpose is to buy time. Time to avoid selling stocks when they're down, time to let the portfolio recover, and time to make calm decisions instead of panic ones. That is one of the biggest reasons I worry less. I'm not counting on selling stocks every single month, no matter what the market's doing. I have a great buffer. And for your retirement planning, I think you need some answer to this question. If the market drops hard right after I retire, where does my spending money come from? If the answer is I'll just sell whatever I need and hope for the best, I think you need to rethink that because hope is a really nice human emotion, but it's a terrible retirement withdrawal strategy. This layer is so important to me that I created an entire video on how to build, store, and maintain a cash runway in retirement. I'll link that in the description if you want to go deeper on that piece, and it will also appear on the screen at the end of this video. Layer 3 is stress testing the plan before taking the leap, and that was a big one for me. Because before I retired, I didn't want to just look at one optimistic version of the future and say, looks good, let's go. I wanted to know what happened if life got messy. What if the market struggles for years? What if inflation runs really hot? What if healthcare costs more than I expected? What if I live to 100? What if I spend more in the early years because I want to, say, travel a lot while I'm young enough to really enjoy it? Those were the kinds of questions and more that I wanted to answer before I walked away from work. One of the tools I used for that was honestly Bolden. I'm a fan of it because it helped me build the plan, test different what if scenarios, and see whether the plan could bend if life didn't go exactly as expected. Bolden does have a free basic plan, so you can start there and try some what if scenarios without paying for anything. But if you want to go deeper, the Paid Planner Plus version gives you more complete planning features, including multiple scenarios, side by side comparisons, Monte Carlo analysis, tax projections, and a Roth conversion explorer. And the great thing about it is you can try it out for 2 weeks before you even commit to the paid version. I used Bolden before I retired to help test whether I was ready, and I still use it now in retirement to keep track of the plan as life, markets, spending, taxes, and healthcare costs change. I'm also an affiliate for Bolden because I genuinely use and like the software and love it and use it for myself. So if you want to check it out, you can scan the QR code that's appearing on the screen right now or use the link in the description that supports the channel at no extra cost to you. Now, I did not use Bolden because I wanted a piece of software to tell me I was invincible. Of course not. Nothing can foresee our exact future, but what it can do is help you see how your plan reacts when you change the assumptions. Now, that is what I cared about. I wanted to see whether the plan could bend. I ran lots of what if scenarios. I looked at the Monte Carlo results for those different scenarios. So, a Monte Carlo analysis runs your plan through many possible market outcomes and estimates how often your money lasts through the full plan. So, if a plan shows a 90% chance of success, that's not a guarantee. It just means the plan made it through 90% of the simulations without you running out of money. And even that needs context because a lot of professionals do not say you need a 100% score. In fact, many planners tend to think in terms of something like the 80 to 90% range, depending on the person, their risk tolerance, their assumption in the plan, and how flexible their spending is. And some retirement researchers make the point that if someone is willing to adjust their spending along the way, a lower score does not automatically mean disaster. It may mean the plan needs adjustments in some scenarios, and that distinction matters because I don't think the goal is to chase a perfect Monte Carlo score. A perfect score can sometimes mean you're oversaving, underspending, or working longer than you need to. For me, the goal was to see whether my essential spending was secure, whether my preferred spending had room to move, and whether I had enough layers if things went badly. And when I ran all the what if scenarios in Bolden, the plan came out strong, so that made me feel tremendously confident in my retirement decision. And I really needed that because making the decision to retire is life altering. And I didn't want to quit my job and then discover I made a mistake and have to look for work again. I didn't want to be in a situation where I got a taste of freedom and then be like, well, that was a fun experiment for a while. But here I am again, back to work. Even after running my own scenarios, I still wanted another set of eyes before I took the leap. So I had a couple of financial planners review my situation. In my case, that was complimentary through E-Trade, which is part of Morgan Stanley, and they were able to run the plan through their own tools as well. That helped confirm what I was seeing. I had a plan that could bend with life's curveballs. If your brokerage offers retirement planning support, it might be worth asking about. And if not, consider paying for an hourly flat fee fiduciary advisor to review your plan. For a decision this big, that second set of eyes can be money well spent. Between my own planning, the software, the what if scenarios, the Monte Carlo testing, and the outside review from financial planners, that is what finally helped me shake the fear enough to take the leap to retire early and not fear running out of money. Layer 4 is understanding that retirement spending is not a straight line. Before retirement, I modeled spending like a lot of people do. You pick an annual number, you adjust it for inflation, then project it forward year after year like retirement is a perfectly smooth sidewalk. That can be useful for planning. You need assumptions, but actual retirement is not anywhere that smooth. Some years are going to cost more, some years are going to cost less. Early retirement can be just as expensive as working, sometimes more, because now you're actually having time to do things while you're still young and healthy enough to enjoy them. That's the stage I'm in now. I'm not spending dramatically less than when I was working. In some areas, I'm spending more because I finally have time to travel, do projects, and enjoy the years I work so hard to reach. Later, I know that may change. In my elderly years, life is going to slow down. Travel and projects will slow down as I may not have the energy or movement as good anymore. Of course, healthcare could go the other way, so I'm not pretending later retirement is automatically going to be cheaper. But the point is, retirement spending is not one clean, straight line, and that matters. Because if you assume every dollar of spending must continue forever at the same level, you might scare yourself into working longer than necessary because you're afraid of running out of money. But if you assume spending will magically drop and stay low, you may fool yourself in the other direction. The better questions are, can my plan handle real spending patterns? Can it handle higher spending in the early years? Can it handle when unexpected and expensive house repairs show up? Can it handle the years when we travel a lot? That's the layer I'm talking about. Not pretending spending is low, not pretending it's fixed, but building a plan that can handle the fact that spending changes in the different phases of retirement. And that's why the 4% rule doesn't quite work, among other reasons. I'm sure you probably heard of it. With the 4% rule, the basic idea is that if you retire with a diversified portfolio, you withdraw 4% in the first year, then increase that dollar amount for inflation each year. And historically, that had a very strong record of lasting for 30 years. But the problem is, it assumes you're just withdrawing the same amount per year for retirement spending adjusted for inflation. But like I just said, retirement doesn't work like that. It's fine to use for a generic ballpark of how big your nest egg might need to be, but it's not detailed enough. Another issue with it is that it's built around a 30-year retirement. Since I retired early at 55, that only takes me to 85. My father has already lived past 85. So if I'm fortunate enough to live longer, I need the plan to go longer too. Another issue with it is that the 4% rule was built around surviving the worst historical scenarios. And that's the part that's easy to miss. It's a conservative withdrawal rate that was designed to survive the ugly cases. And in many historical scenarios, retirees who followed a conservative withdrawal approach did not just avoid running out of money, they ended up with more money, sometimes a lot more. Michael Kitces has written about this. He's a well-known retirement planning researcher, writer, and educator whose work is widely followed by financial advisors. And one of the things he said that really stuck with me is that when retirees followed the 4% rule over the historical 30-year periods he analyzed, over two-thirds of the time they finished with more than double their starting wealth. And half the time they nearly tripled it. And more than 90% of the time they finished with more than their starting principal after 30 years. That's wild when you think about it, because most of us are terrified of the disaster scenario of running out of money at 82 and having to go back to work. And don't get me wrong, we need to plan to avoid the disaster scenario, but there is another risk too, that we spend the healthiest years of our retirement not spending and enjoying it like we should. I do not want to be an 82-year-old with a bigger portfolio than I need and regretting being afraid to take the trips I wanted, help my daughter, enjoy the hobbies, and making the memories when I had the health and energy to do it. So instead of treating a withdrawal rate like a fixed commandment, like the 4% rule does, I think about retirement spending more like a gas pedal. If markets are terrible, I can let up on the gas. If markets are strong and the plan improves, maybe I can press the gas a little more. Not recklessly, but also not fearing and regretting not doing things I could have done in my healthy and energetic go-go years. Layer 5 is planning healthcare and taxes together. This is where early retirement is very different from a more traditional retirement. If you retire at 65, you're usually going straight into Medicare. But if you retire early, like I did, you may have several years where health insurance is one of the biggest swing costs in your retirement plan. And that is why I consider this a real layer of protection. Because if I can avoid accidentally making healthcare more expensive than it needs to be, less money has to come out of my portfolio, more money can stay invested, and my cash runway lasts longer should I need to pull from them to pay expensive premiums. So, this is not just about saving a few dollars on premiums, it helps protect the whole retirement plan. Because here's where a lot of retirees get surprised. If you're using the Affordable Care Act marketplace before Medicare, your subsidy is not based on your portfolio balance. It's based on your household income for the year, specifically your modified adjusted gross income or MAGI. And for 2026, under the current rules, to qualify for the premium tax credit, or in other words, the subsidy, your household income generally needs to be between 100% and 400% of the federal poverty level, or FPL, for your household size. I'll put a table in the description from the Department of Health and Human Services so you can see what that looks like by household size. But the big idea is this: in early retirement, your portfolio balance does not directly determine whether you qualify for Affordable Care Act subsidies. Your MAGI does, and that is why the accounts you draw from matter so much, because $50,000 of spending is not always $50,000 of MAGI. Traditional IRA and 401k and 403b withdrawals generally increase MAGI. Taxable brokerage sales can increase MAGI through gains, dividends, and interest. Cash does not increase MAGI. Qualified Roth IRA withdrawals generally do not increase MAGI. And Roth conversions can be useful, but they can also push MAGI higher for the year. So the question is not just, do I have enough money to spend? The question is, where should the money come from this year? That is the part that feels very different once you're actually living early retirement. And if I pull money from the wrong place at the wrong time, I may accidentally make health insurance more expensive than it needed to be. And that extra cost has to come from somewhere, cash or investments, and impacting the flexibility in my plan. So, the less I accidentally waste on taxes or inflated health insurance premiums, the less pressure I'm putting on the portfolio. And the less pressure I put on the portfolio, the stronger the plan stays. That is why the bridge years matter so much. The years before Medicare and before Social Security, and where account choices, tax choices, and healthcare choices all start bumping into each other. And it's something you really have to plan for. Layer 6 is having backup levers. This is probably the biggest reason I don't worry about running out of money the way I used to. A fragile retirement plan has no levers. Everything has to go right. The market has to cooperate. Spending has to behave. Healthcare has to be reasonable. Taxes have to stay friendly. And no major surprises are allowed. That is not a plan I would feel good about. A stronger retirement plan has options. And options really help calm that fear of running out of money. For an early retiree, those levers might include changing when you claim Social Security, adjusting withdrawals, using more taxable brokerage money one year and less pre-tax money another year, doing Roth conversions in some years and skipping them in others, reducing travel, delaying a major purchase, downsizing later, working part-time if you actually want to, or changing how aggressively you spend before Medicare or Social Security starts. Not all of those apply to me, not all of them will apply to you, but the point is not that everyone has the same levers. The point is that you should know what yours are. When I think about running out of money, I'm not thinking, can nothing ever change? I'm thinking, if something changes, what can I change back? And that is a much more useful question. And it makes retirement feel less like stepping off a cliff and more like driving a car with brakes, mirrors, and a steering wheel. Layer 7 is reviewing the plan without obsessing over it. This is another layer that helps me worry less. Retirement is not set it and forget it, but it also should not become a full-time anxiety-filling job. I do not want to spend retirement refreshing account balances all the time and having it become almost like a job or a hobby. That would not be fun. But I also do not want to ignore the plan, so I like the idea of revisiting the plan on a regular schedule, maybe quarterly. For me, that means looking at spending, portfolio performance, taxes, healthcare, cash reserves, and whether anything has changed. Am I spending more than I expected? Is the cash runway still where I want it? Do I need any year-end tax or Affordable Care Act adjustments? Has the market changed the plan? Do I need to refill a bucket, slow spending, or safely spend a little more? That review process matters because it keeps the plan alive. A retirement plan is not a document you create once and then frame it on the wall. It's a living plan, and when you keep it updated, you can catch small issues before they become big ones. And that's much better than just hoping everything works out. So, when I put all these layers together, that is why I don't worry about running out of money the same way I used to. I worry less because I have layers around the risks. I know my spending floor, I have a cash runway. I stress tested the plan. I understand that spending changes over time. I'm not treating the 4% rule like a commandment. I'm planning healthcare and taxes together. I know my backup levers. I have flexibility. And I'm reviewing the plan periodically without obsessing over it all the time. That's the difference. Now, with all of that said, am I totally over the fear of running out of money in retirement? No, not completely. I don't think that'll ever happen because I think that's very normal. I'm not sure I'd ever be able to get rid of the fear completely, even though with solid planning, it's pretty much irrational. There is still a part of my brain that has a hard time going from saving money to spending money. I was the retirement planner and saver in our household. My wife trusted me with it, which I appreciate, but it also means I carried a lot of that responsibility. So when you spend decades building the pile, it does not always feel natural to start using the pile. Your spreadsheets can say you're fine, your retirement planning software can say you're fine, financial planners can say you're fine, but your nervous system still doesn't get the memo. That's me. I had done the planning, I had run the numbers, I validated the plan, but there's still always that nightmare scenario in the back of my mind. I remember seeing some television show or YouTube video somewhere where the nightmare was basically someone much older, maybe in their 80s, running out of money and having to go back to work just to make ends meet. That stuck with me because that is not just a math problem, that's a loss of control problem, it's a dignity problem and a freedom problem. And honestly, it scared me. I do not want to run out of money. I want my wife and I to be secure. Now, I don't think fear is automatically bad. Fear can be useful if it motivates you to build a strong plan, as it did for me. Believe me, I'm doing everything I can to avoid that nightmare scenario. It can push you to know your spending, build a cash runway, stress test the plan, think through healthcare, understand your taxes, and get another set of eyes on your situation to make sure you didn't miss anything. That is the productive use of fear, but fear becomes a problem when it keeps making decisions after the plan's already solid. That is when fear can become debilitating. It can keep people working years longer than they need to. It can keep people from spending money on experiences they can afford. It can make someone with a strong plan live as if they're always one bad month away from disaster. And that is not what I want, nor do you, I'm sure. So, yes, we need to protect against the bad scenarios, but we also need to be honest about the other risk, the risk of letting fear steal the best years of retirement, even when the plan is strong enough to support the life we said we wanted. That is the balance I'm trying to strike. Let the fear motivate the planning. Let it push you to build a solid, bendable plan. But once you have that plan, don't let fear be the only reason you keep delaying retirement. And don't let fear keep you from using the freedom you spent decades building. For me, retiring at 55 has taught me that confidence does not come from having a perfect plan. That's impossible. It comes from having a plan with layers like I talked about in this video, a plan that can survive imperfection, a plan that can bend without breaking. And if you are still working and trying to decide whether you can retire, I would not only ask, do I have enough money? I would also ask specific questions to make sure I also have a bendable plan to conquer that running out of money fear. Knowledge here is your best defense. And I think the best question of all of this is, what am I afraid of specifically? Because I'm afraid of running out of money is a big, vague fear. It can hang over everything. But once you get specific, you can plan and take action to get rid of that fear. If you're afraid of a market crash, build a runway. If you're afraid of healthcare costs, model the premiums and understand how income affects them. If you're afraid of taxes, build a withdrawal strategy. If you're afraid of overspending, separate needs from wants. If you're afraid of retiring too early, test different retirement dates. The vague fear of running out of money creates paralysis. Specific fear creates an action plan. So when I say I don't worry about running out of money, I don't mean the thought never crosses my mind. I mean I have moved from fear to management. And for me, that has made all the difference because early retirement is not just about having enough money. It's about building enough confidence to actually use the freedom you bought. And if you haven't already, subscribe for more practical retirement planning from someone who's actually living it, me. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What worries you most about running out of money in retirement? Is it the market? Is it healthcare? Is it taxes? Is it inflation? Or is it the mental shift going from saving money to spending it? Before we go, some freebies to share that are available on my Patreon, and the link is in the description. You can join for free and download these from my tools collection. First, you can download my 12-step early retirement planning checklist. It's a practical, easy to follow guide that walks you through everything from calculating your fire number to building a tax-efficient withdrawal strategy. Second, if you're on an ACA health plan or are planning to be if and when you retire, download my ebook ACA Premium Shock Fix, 10 ways to pay less for marketplace coverage all year long. This ebook gives you a clear, practical framework to lower your ACA premiums legally by understanding and controlling the income number that drives your subsidy, MAGI, or your modified adjusted gross income. And lastly, download my ACA MAGI estimator. It's an Excel template that can be used to estimate your MAGI for ACA health insurance. And you can also use it to keep track of your MAGI if you're currently on ACA health insurance to help stay within the 400% FPL threshold to maintain subsidies. And if you're interested in more help, and while you're on my Patreon taking advantage of the free downloads, you can also check out the paid membership levels. There are options for additional tools, ad-free and early podcast access, and a higher level where you can ask me your retirement questions directly. Lastly, go to mikeupland.com for all of my media. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, take care and make the most of today.